Welcome to LitLoom. Today we are not just reading chapter 1 of Kamala Markandaya's Nectar in a Sieve. We are dissecting it. We'll unpack every line, every image to understand how Markandaya builds a world of memory, loss, and resilience. This foundational analysis for understanding the entire novel will be explained in the next part of the video. Perhaps that was why they could not find me a rich husband. I told you this dowry system is something else, right? So, as this is marked as important paragraph number 2, I will tell you again about the identification of the context. Postcolonial novel, Nectar in a Sieve. The writer is an Indian novelist. You can mention that as well. If you can remember her birthday, 1924 to 2004, and her name is Kamala Markandaya. The plot is actually this is a flashback of the protagonist about her marriage, right? And we will discuss the themes, literary devices, and the other facts connected with each line separately. Okay. And also the character brought down, how the characters are developed in this context, right? Yes. Perhaps that was why they could not find me a rich husband. That is about, of course, about child marriage, right? So, and relationships, bond, marriage. And other than that, it's about economic condition, poverty, and the theme dowry is the main theme, right? Rich husband, which is the ultimate fantasy of each and every girl in the Indian society at that time, and married me to a tenant farmer. Okay, tenant farmer, again, it's a symbol which symbolizes the feudal system, right? And when we talk about the collector, it represents the British colonial administration, and the Zamindari system is represented by the okay, it will be mentioned later with this tenant farmer thing, right? So tenant farmer is the symbol of sorry, the symbol of Zamindari system, which made the traditional leaders also her traditional leaders like her father figureheads. And here comes the people who work under those people, right? Tenant farmer. Okay. So as I told you, the feudal system, tenant in the sense they do farming in a land where they don't have the ownership. That is what tenant called. This comes with the Zamindari system, as I told to you. Okay. Now here this part defines Nathan's wealth condition, economic condition, right? His class consciousness also highlighted as a special theme because this contrast with the rich husband and the phrase tenant farmer, right? The class consciousness and how well they consider about the classes, everything is also mentioned here. Who was poor in everything but in love and care for me. Uh, his wife whom he took at the age of 12. So this is really important. Okay, so here Nathan defines, Rukmani defines that Nathan's wealth as emotional thing and not material. Right? What she says is he's materially poor, but emotionally he is a rich husband. The phrase took at the age of 12. Okay, before that, let's talk about that poor in everything but in love and care for me again. What does that define? It defines about Nathan's character. It seems that he is a lovely, careful, protective husband who is not the who contrasts with the typical portrait of a husband in uh, village, right? Indian society, right? So it seems that even after his death, Rukmani, old Rukmani, the narrator, is still satisfied and contented with the bond, the relationship, right? That's why she feels that emotional bond, the spiritual connection, uh, even after his death. Because for her, the materialistic prosperity is nothing, but the emotional prosperity within Nathan was really made her satisfied than anything else, right? So even though Nathan is a symbol of lower class, poor, poverty, as feudal system, those also there, but I'm talking about the bond, right? That is about the love, the theme of love, spiritual contentment versus materialistic contentment, and also female dependence you can take, right? And there's another theme, acceptance of fate positively. Positivity in Rukmani's character also highlighted because she is still a child at the age of 12. This is about child marriage, the victimization of children due to social conventions, right? She is immature at the age of 12. Her childhood was sacrificed for marriage, right? She had to fulfill the duties as a wife, right? It's mentioned here later on. However, now this is about gender discrimination, female dependence, right? Social norms, conventions, child marriage. This part is really important and really effective if you got it. You should be happy if you got this part, right? You can say many things, okay? Right. Theme of exploitation as well highlighted here, even labor exploitation and also child exploitation, right? I'm talking about both, right? And our relatives, I know, murmured that the match was below me. My mother herself was not happy, but I was without beauty and without dowry, and it was the best she could do. A poor match, they said, and not always quietly, how little they knew any of them. Now, here, this part is also really important. See how she positively accepted her fate and valued the spirituality, the emotional bond in spite of believing on material possessions, right? Now, okay, now here she talks about I was without beauty and without dowry. It's about poverty, right? Materially and also beauty. And the repetition of the word without highlights uh, the change, poverty, right? And also you can add how little they knew any of them. See the exclamation mark. She is happy in her marriage. The usage of punctuation marks highlights the agitation, surprise, and also the mocking, sarcastic tone towards other opinions, right? Because she herself is satisfied with the present circumstances, right? She is happy with Nathan. That's what she meant, okay? So, this part is really important. Rukmani, in that case, she is a mature person comparatively, right? She has a mature perspective even as a child, right? All right. And because I am saying it because rarely we can hear something like this from an Indian woman, because there's then gender discrimination. Most of the cases they don't receive love, they criticize us their marriage, especially the child marriage, right? Dishonor them. But here Rukmani speaks in a much positive point of view, right? So I told you about the themes, and you can add flashback, first person narration, usage of simple language, punctuation mark usage, right? Everything is included in this small paragraph, right? Okay, so that's the end of uh, that paragraph. It's really effective paragraph. You can ask more questions about the effects. It's okay, feel free to ask questions. The comment box is open for you. Okay, next, the important paragraph number 3. Identification. Nectar in a Sieve, a post-colonial novel, and the author is an Indian author who was born in 1924 and died on 2004. Her name is Kamala Markandaya. Okay, the plot is placed and described in first person narration, which is an authorial passage. This is a flashback of Rukmani's about her wedding and after the wedding ceremony. Right. Then let's dive into themes, literary devices, character development, and each and every detail that you need to know when answering a question that could come from this paragraph. A woman, they say, always remembers her wedding night. Okay, now who are they here? The other people. Immediately subverts a glitch by this line. Okay, let's move on and then let's discuss this whole together. Okay, well, maybe they do, but for me there are other nights I prefer to remember, sweeter, fuller, when I went to my husband, matured in mind as well as in body, not as a pained and awkward child as I did on that first night. Okay, this establishes Rukmani as a practical, honest narrator who values mature, consensual love over ritualistic or traumatic first experiences. This is really important. Okay, so this is about hardships, pain, awkwardness, difficulty, the immaturity, unpleasantness that we can see in child marriages. This line criticizes the ancient, outdated socio-economic values of rural Indian society. Right? Now, wedding night. It's about memory. This associates with the theme of memory, marriage, remembrance as well. Contrast, right, with the other night. Maybe they do, but for me, see that tone? It's not a typical portrayal of a woman. That's why I said she is honest. Okay? Of course, the female victimization, suffering, gender discrimination, sexual relationship, culture, child marriage, hardships in life, all are brought out here in this single line. And see the consequences of child marriages. Okay, we are moving on. And when the religious ceremonies had been completed, we left, my husband and I. Okay, so this is about the religion, right? And also about the culture. There's a touch of culture. We left, my husband and I. See the belonging, right? The acceptance of culture within her. Now, this is a conventional portrayal of Indian ceremonies, but there's no enough information for us to know, right? All right. However, this paragraph is really important. The words sweeter, fuller are symbols, right? They metaphorically highlights the immaturity and the change as a theme also highlighted with the change from childhood to adulthood, the transformation, right? uh, See how she compares her pained, awkward child experience to another nights, right? So that's about suffering hardships. And also as a technique you can mention the simile, right? Added to that you can take this one single line as a question. That's why I separated it from the rest of the chapter, because this contains lots of literary devices, character development, themes, and as for the context you can see first person narration. This is an authorial passage, and also you can see the flashback, right? So feel free to comment about what you feel about this part. Is there anything to add or is there any question? Feel free to comment below. How well I remember the day and the sudden sickness that overcame me when the moment of departure came. So that is about remembrance, the memory, and see how helpless she is, right? So she is a child at the moment that is described in here, 12 years old child. Okay, now see how well she remembered the day, and the sudden sickness is about the discomfort that she felt, right? Okay, my mother in the doorway, no tears in her eyes, but her face bloated with their weight, right? This is about imagery. This is a superb imagery. The bloated conveys suppressed, painful emotion, showing the stoicism required in their culture, right? Okay. My father standing a little in front of her, waiting to see us safely on our way. That is the same, right? So that stoicism is something common. I don't know. What do you think? My husband seated already on the bullock cart with the tin trunk full of cooking vessels, my saris next to him. Saris. Okay. Mhm. Somehow I found myself also sitting in the cart in finery with downcast eyes. Then the cart began to move, lurching as the bullocks got awkwardly into rhythm, and I was sick. Such a disgrace for me. How shall I ever live it down? I remember thinking, I shall never forget. I haven't forgotten, but the memory is not so. My husband soothed and calmed me. That's why I said that he is not a typical portrayal of husband. Okay, before that, her physical sickness that she mentions here is a manifestation of her physique upheaval. And then let's move to Nathan's response, right? It is a thing, right, uh, that goes beyond the mutual understanding that we can see in him. The understanding, right, because he treats well to his child bride. No dislike, no anger, right? The caring, loving, unconventional portrait of a husband, right, can be seen in him. And see, my husband soothed and calmed me. She felt that love, that satisfaction, that comfort within him. Even though the memory is not so, she can still feel that. In the same time, we can see how she was uneasy. Such a disgrace for me. Worried, anxious, and distressed, upset, uh, uneasy, felt uneasy, right? All these things are also there because she's unsteady at the moment. She have to get used to the new life, right? That is a great step for a child, 12 years old. Okay, so that is what highlighted in this paragraph. It's a thing that might happen to anybody, he said. Do not fret, do not feel distress, upset. Okay, And let's talk about this non-judgmental kindness of Nathan. What do you think about that? That is why I said he is exceptional than the typical portrayal that we imagine him to be. Okay? Come, dry your eyes and sit up here beside me. So I did, and after a while I felt better. The tears left my eyes and dried on my lashes. This also about dependence of women, uh, because earlier she used to depend on father and now on husband. Okay. However, the character of Nathan is positively developed within this paragraph very clearly. Then the narrator tells us about the journey, dislocation, and the kindness she received from husband. Right? For 6 hours we rode on and on along the dusty road, passing several villages. Okay, now see, there's no information of the names of villages, right? So it could be more informative if she can say, I mean, the writer, right? So that's a weakness on the way 2 hours, which was a good distance away. Halfway there, we stopped and ate a meal, boiled rice, dal, vegetables, and curds, a whole coconut apiece too, in which my husband nigged. Nigged means cut and scratch like a hole with his teeth for me so that I might drink the clear milk. Now see, this is a very tender, intimate act. The seed is actually a tool of his labor, becomes an instrument of care. It's really beautiful. The shared coconut milk also symbolizes the nurtured partnership, the relationship between them, and we can have a positive hope about that, isn't it? Okay. Then he unyoked. Unyoked means released the bullocks and led them to the small pool of water near which we had stopped, giving them each a handful of hay. Poor beasts, they which we had stopped. Sorry, I'm sorry. The next line, right? Poor beasts, they seemed glad of the water, for already their hides were dusty. Okay, so it seems that the way to home is not that um near, it's distant. Again, it's about dislocation, right? The separation, that feeling, how would you feel, right? And then next you have to think, how would you feel if you are 12? And how Rukmani would have felt. That is how we explain the characters, right? Think about that. What will you do if you have to face this condition? Will you bear it up? Will you also take it positively as Rukmani did? Right? Will you also accept it as positively as Rukmani did? What would you do? Comment, right? Okay. Let's share our ideas. Be open. Okay, no one is going to judge us yours idea because it is different from person to person, right? And we should be open enough, open minded enough to accept each and every idea what others say. Okay, that is why we need to dive into the essence of literature, and if you have, you will be open minded enough to see every side, every perspective, and accept it another opinion about that same thing. Okay, right, so that is the end of that long paragraph. Okay, then we rested a half hour before resuming our journey. The animals, refreshed, began stepping jauntily again. Tossing means throwing, flinging their heads and jingling the bells that hung from their red painted horns. The air was full of the sounds of bells and of birds, sparrows and bulbuls mainly, and sometimes the cry of an eagle. But when we passed a grove, it means a copse, green and leafy, I could hear mynas and parrots. It was very warm, and unused to so long a jolting I fell asleep. Now here the narrator describes about the nature, the beauty of environment. This is a pastoral idyll with specific Indian birds, bulbuls, mynas. These are specific Indian creatures, right? This creates a moment of peace and beauty, a last glimpse of innocence before her new reality, right? Okay, and she fell asleep, right? That is the end of that paragraph. There's nothing much to explain there. It's all about the theme of nature. From the misty realms of memory to the solid yielding earth of the pumpkin patch, Markandaya installs every theme, symbol, and conflict that will define Rukmani's epic struggle. The title's metaphor is already at work. She is building a life trying to hold nectar in the sieve of circumstance. In our next part of this chapter, we will see the first grains begin to slip through. If you found this deep dive valuable, smash that like button. Subscribe to LitLoom and let me know in the comments which symbol you think is the most powerful in this foundational chapter.